I'm going to tell you a story about my dad. When I got my very first job at the age of 15 and a half, my dad, who had been around, he'd been in the Navy, was born in a place called Charlestown here in Boston, which is Boston, but not really Boston. And he had had a life, and he said to me, "You're about to go into the corporate workforce, and you're going to meet some of the greatest people you'll ever meet in your life." And then he walked away, and as he was walking away, he said to me, "And you'll meet a lot of assholes." So that's what this video is all about. Your life in the corporate world. I'm Joe. Welcome to Vox Pictoria. This is the career series, and today we're going to talk about toxic managers. So if you're in a situation where you have a toxic manager, the first thing I want to say to you is that if they're affecting your life in a negative way such that you can't function in your life, and let's say, as an example, you might need to seek help because of your job, because of your manager, you might want to think about leaving that job. There's a famous saying, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. So that's true. You know, if you've got someone above you who's making you miserable, you probably want to question the whole thing and say, balance it out. Is it worth it? You're getting a paycheck, but are they affecting you in such a way that, you can't function in the rest of your life? Or you're bringing that home with you and, you're affecting your family, the people you love. That's not okay. So that would really be the first thing I say. If it's that bad, you need to come up with a plan to get out of that situation. I've done that many times, in fact. I had some bosses who were so bad that I literally had to quit the job, which, looking back on it, was the right thing to do. So if it's a case like that, then, I would say you might want to consider leaving the job. So there's that. But there are other pieces to this. If you have a toxic manager, someone who's making you unhappy, someone who's making you miserable, there are a lot of things that I can share with you right now in this video that might help you, right? So let's say you've got a bad manager and you're going to hang in there because you love the company, right? So you just want to stay. And so here's some things to think about. I always think about, am I smarter than this manager? Sort of just in general, right? Meaning that they've achieved this status of manager somehow, not because they're qualified as a manager or that they have great managerial skills, but maybe they were with the company from the beginning, they did something good and they got promoted. They got promoted based on something they did, not based on the fact that they have excellent managerial skills. Unfortunately, we see a lot of that in the workforce. Someone who got promoted, who shouldn't have been promoted, now they're managing people. They're not great at managing people, and they shouldn't be managing people, and they're making people miserable, right? So that's one to think about. If you find that you can step back and say, I'm smarter here than this person who's managing me, then what you can do is begin to manage them. Now, I did another video about managing your manager. In that video, I didn't talk about toxic managers. I said, most of the managers I have are really excellent. And in fact, the managers I have now are excellent. So if you're watching, you know who you are. Thank you so much. But if you're in a situation where you're being managed by this person who's really not that bright and not that capable and making a mess of things, then you may be able to strategize with yourself to kind of manage them. Yes, it's extra effort and all that stuff. But once you figure out how they operate, you can get out in front of them and sort of cut them off. Or avoid them, just don't get on their radar screen. Come up with ways to do what they want. Eventually, those kinds of people, I find, the big machine spits them out, so to speak. They leave, they don't stay that long, so you might want to wait them out. So that's one strategy. Step back and realize, okay, this person who's managing me currently, is the manager in the org chart, but they're really not that bright, and I wouldn't do things the way they're doing things, and they're kind of making a mess of stuff like that, but you can't really help them. You just got to deal with them. And part of dealing with them is part of getting your paycheck, right? So that's the thing. You're being paid to do a job, right? And you shouldn't be miserable, but sometimes that happens in life, that happens in the corporate workforce. Okay, something else I wanted to help you with is that think about your internal self, right? Your core. You may be stronger than you think, right? So it's this whole sticks and stones thing, right? If someone is making you uncomfortable, that's really a psychological game. You might be stronger than them, right? Their opinion doesn't matter. So if you have a thick skin, you might let that just roll off you, right? If you can. Sometimes you can't, right? I understand that, but you might think, okay, this person's my manager, they're an idiot, but I got to deal with them, right? So that's just part of the whole package until you can find a better arrangement for yourself within the same company, or maybe you get a better opportunity and leave the company. But as I say, a lot of times these people who are maybe making you uncomfortable, you might not be the only person they're making uncomfortable. If you can wait them out, they're either going to get promoted again somehow, because that's a magical, mysterious thing. Sometimes these people just keep getting promoted, which is weird. They don't have a knack for managing people, but they have a knack for getting promoted. I don't understand that phenomenon, but you might run into that. So your options are to leave the company. You can stay and deal with them. And if you stay and deal with them, that's really what this video is about. Ask yourself, how smart are you? How thick is your skin? Can you handle it? The other thing is that sometimes you may find this weird thing where even though they're your manager and they're making you miserable, if you kind of show up and are able to meet their needs, what they ask you for, you may find out surprisingly, and this happened to me, that they love you, right? They don't know they're making you miserable. They may do that for 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, but in the end, they may show a little bit of themselves where they say, I'm so grateful to you, you are my best employee, which has happened to me in the past. I've had these horrible managers, but I've had to deal with them. And I just sort of came up with a strategy to meet their needs, get them what they want right away, learn what their idiosyncrasies are, and kind of just show up and take care of all that for them and do my job. That's a lot of extra work, but I've actually had to do that in the past. So you might have to do that. Don't let this whole thing make you miserable. That's really the point. I mean, we're on the planet for a certain amount of time. You're a person, your manager is a person. Inherently, there's all these psychological things that are going on with each one of us. The other thing that you might not realize right away is that outside of work, your manager might be an awesome person, right? That might be someone you'd actually hang out with, maybe, but you just can't work for this person. That happens a lot too. And so there may be something higher up, or maybe something affecting them that you don't know about, that's pitting the two of you against one another. So the corporate workforce is famous for doing that. I really would caution you about going to HR if you feel your manager is toxic and complaining about them, because that's kind of going around them. I also don't think it's worthwhile to confront them head on unless you're going to leave the company, right? Say, hey, you're making me miserable. What's wrong with you? You always make me upset, all that stuff. I can tell you from experience, if you approach someone like that who's your manager, that's not going to work. They're just going to make your life even more miserable, and that's going to make the relationship way worse. So this toxic manager thing is really, really tricky. You're in an org chart. You're underneath a person who is getting paid to manage you or your team, and they're not that good at it, and they're making you miserable. So that's a very difficult situation to be in. But again, your options are to stay with the company or leave. If you stay, you're going to have to manage your manager, which can be a lot of work, but you may get promoted yourself and you may get out from under them, right? So, which would be a blessing. So yeah, there are these people in the workplace, as my dad said, you're going to meet assholes. There's just no, that's just how the world works. That's how the corporate world works. You know, the whole corporate world is about making money. Bottom line. It's not about anything else. Business is about business. And the business that business is in is the business of making money, no matter what anyone says. And money changes people. Money affects the way people think. Money affects the way people treat other people. So there's that whole psychological thing that goes on into it. But if you're smart, and I know you are, you can outsmart your manager. You can outsmart your toxic manager. You don't have to sit there with your arms folded across your chest and say, woe is me, or I hate this, or why are they picking on me? You can come up with a strategy to flip this whole thing around and put some psychological armor on yourself that will protect you from this. Again, you need to weigh the balance of, do you need to keep this job? Is there a better opportunity out there for you somewhere? Of course, you may run into an even worse boss somewhere else, but yeah, these are the things that you have to think about when you have a toxic boss. There are ways through this. Again, I would not recommend going to HR because it's going to come back to your boss, and that's not going to be good. And then, you know, I don't think they're ever going to say to you, what's wrong? Are you upset? They're just not going to do that. Again, based on what category of person they might not care. They might not care that you're offended or upset. There are people in the world like that. You know, if they're pissing someone off or making someone unhappy, I've met them. They're going to say, I don't care, leave. If you don't like it, leave. That's their attitude. But at the same time, it is your life, and you have to be happy doing what you're doing. And, you know, do you get paid to be miserable? Maybe to a certain percent you do, but having a manager who makes you miserable, that's not the best arrangement to be in. So I hope this video has helped you think about some different things. It's not really as cut and dry as you think. Hey, I have a toxic manager. There's no way out. I'm just going to be miserable. That's not true, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. If you have a toxic manager, you need to step back and look at it a couple of different ways. There may actually be a path forward that could work in your benefit, right? So that's really what I'm trying to help you understand in this video. Your manager's a person too. They are filled with all of the same things that all of us are filled with. They might be on a certain spectrum where they're, trying to remember the words here, like, I'm not trying to be funny or anything, you know, there are psychopaths and sociopaths, and they're on that scale somewhere, and they live among us, and sometimes they end up being managers, right? So you got to deal with them. Then there's a whole garden variety of simply crabby people who are unhappy in their lives, and there's a whole other group of people that you might be managed by who are just horrible managers. You know, that's not what they do. Someone may have come into the company as an excellent computer coder. I mean, world-class computer coder. And because they did such a great job, the team grows, and someone in the company says, well, you're the best coder, so you're going to manage the team. But that's a mistake, because as great as they are as a coder or a problem solver, they suck at managing people. So that's a giant mistake. So managers should have that blend of being able to do what they do, but have great people skills as well. So I hope that helps. Keep your faith up. Don't get discouraged. The overarching message in this video is that if you have a toxic manager, protect yourself. Don't let it go too far. Don't let it go too long. If you feel you're being hurt or damaged in some way, get out of that situation, because you don't need toxic people in your life. You really, really don't. And then secondly, think of it in a different way, right? There may be some subtle adjustments that you can make on your end, like outsmart them, show up before they do. If they ask you to do something that seems ridiculous, do it right away and give them more than what you think they need, right? So that just gets them off your back and you can do your job. The last thing I'll say here is really what this whole series is about. Is if you have a toxic manager, imagine not having a toxic manager. Imagine you being the boss. Imagine working for yourself. Imagine having your own gig. That's kind of where I'm going with all of this, is that you can be in the corporate workforce, but there are things you have to deal with. If you're your own boss, if you have your own company, your own business, you're top of the tree. And, you may have to deal with toxic clients, but you don't have to work with them if you don't want to. But you'll be the boss, and because you had toxic bosses in the past, you know how to manage people. In fact, the last thing I'll say here is that if you have a series of toxic bosses or a toxic boss, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how not to treat people. And then if you're ever in the situation where you're a manager, you'll probably be a pretty awesome manager because you had that toxic boss. In fact, one of the best managers I ever had said to me, I told her, I said, "You're just the best manager." And she said, "Yes, that's because I had a lot of crappy managers." And I learned how not to treat people, and that's why. So, SM, you know who you are, you're out there. Thank you so much. All right, people, take a look at my channel update. Take a look at some of these other videos. These videos are here to help you. I hope that helped you out. We are growing the channel. Please like. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. We are on the cusp of 100 subscribers. So I'm out from Vox Pictoria. I'm Joe. Keep an eye out for the next video. Please take care of yourself. Take care of one another. Do something nice for someone. And smile and breathe. And be grateful for all the good things you have. I'm grateful for you. Off I go. Thanks so much. Bye.